without any further ado, we really appreciate our speaker who's come all the way from the most recent stop in Memphis, but home is Uganda. So just a few miles away. And so Dr. Patrick, will you come forward and introduce our speaker tonight?
I'm glad to see you all, especially those who are from my classes. Everybody else, it's exciting to see you out here in this weather. Just so you know, I come from Uganda, the same country that I just speak from. That's in Africa. The average temperature there from January to December is 77 degrees. We have winter during July. Everybody's freezing to death. The temperature drops to about 65. So he's going through quite an experience of another kind. Our speaker is Gideon Byamugisha. He is an ordained Anglican minister, and he has been very, very instrumental in advocating for various forms of human rights for women, children, but in particular, raising awareness and advocating for the rights for those who are suffering from HIV/AIDS. I'm glad to introduce him because he has been very instrumental in affecting policy and also impacting not only spiritually but the behavioral orientations of people in my country who at one time we had the highest rates of HIV infections. It was about 7.1, and under his leadership and other people joined his team and efforts of the government, the rate of infection dropped to, was it? 7. Yeah. And it was very successful. It became a model for fighting and preventing HIV infections. It was recognized by the United Nations and the U.S. Congress. It was a very successful program. But as you know, human nature, complacency and getting used to things, stepped in, and now the rate of infection is back up and very scary. And Canon Gideon, by the way, the word canon in the Anglican Church is like the highest order that be awarded any lay or ordained minister. So it is particularly significant in that he was the first ordained minister to come out openly and say it was HIV positive. At the time when that could not be done even by anyone that is not ordained minister. But that gave him a platform. And Rob and I thought he would be very, very instrumental. We tried, even though the weather did not cover it, so he has to speak to you guys because the mission of this university is we're not only educating you, we are preparing you to have an impact through your lives, to have a mission, a vocation that makes a difference in the world. And we thought it is the perfect embodiment of our mission statement here. He has lived out most of what we teach. Those in my sociology class, I see you Warren, I've had to deal with some of those topics that even culturally I find hard to talk about. Sexual deviance, other aspects of sexuality, the family, all kinds of behavioral issues. But we're not just learning, we're preparing to have an impact on the world. So it is my pleasure to introduce this man of God who has been honored all over the world, up to the Congress, United Nations, many foundations in Japan, tonight, Canon, I welcome you to this house.
Good evening. I greet you all in the name of God, and I bring love and greetings from Uganda, and a few hours ago from Memphis. I want to thank you for the invitation and for honoring me with your presence. So that I thought that should give you a glimpse of where I come from. You've seen my home, my office, and the work I do at the local community level, ensure that we mobilize young people and make this big movement that is necessary to change attitudes and provide a better future for all of us. So I really want to thank you for braving the weather and coming to affirm me and to be in a conversation together, because we are talking about the courage to be a leader, and also to see how we can, maintain truth when it is threatened, and also model that truth. So part of that is to show courage when things are not as good as they're supposed to be. So you are showing powerful leadership by braving the weather. I want to thank Rob and team, and of course my friend Patrick and others who have been participating in making sure that this happens. I will do my presentation in like 3 parts. The first one will be to give a background of myself and how I came to be involved in this fight. The second one will be to reflect on our topic for today. What do we mean when we talk about the courage to lead? And what do we mean by truth is powerful? Or are there times when truth is not powerful? There are times when we fragment truth and we make it powerless. So I am a teacher by profession. My teaching subjects are geography and history. So before I even stepped on the American soil, I was teaching about Grand Canyon, the Great Lakes, and all those issues, Appalachian Mountains. So I was happy to come and say, oh, this is what I was teaching about, to put meat to board. A theologian in training. I always emphasize that I'm not a theologian, but a theologian in training. And the reason is that I tend to have a perspective that the things of God, the things of the divine, cannot be mastered. That the revelation is always going on, and you have to continue learning afresh. Those of you who come from the Christian tradition, you could have, heard when Abraham was being told the Lord God is one. So when Jesus came and said, I and the Father are one, people were shocked. And we know God as one. And even before Jesus went back, he complicated matters further, and he said, by the way, I'm going, but I'm not going. I'm leaving you a paraclete. So the Holy Spirit. So people began to say, hey, now are we talking of the Trinity? So now we know that God is Trinity from that angle simply because of what he has revealed to us. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe we don't know. So I am always open to new learnings, encountering other faiths. What do I learn from other faiths? What is God revealing himself even among the non-faith, people who don't identify with any religion, what type of spirituality can we pick and borrow from there? ministry to minister to people who are vulnerable, not just to AIDS, but vulnerable in every situation, that as long as we are humans, we have two realities. We are born and we die. And in between, there are issues of survival, there are issues of thriving, but there are also issues of risk and vulnerability. So God has given me that context. In 1992, I was lecturing in one of the theoretical colleges in Uganda, and but before that, 1991, I was preparing to go for a PhD in the University of Cardiff in South Wales in UK. And then my wife suddenly complained of a backache. The next day, she said, "Oh, I have a stomach pain, I have a headache." We took her to hospital, and within 5 days, she was dead. So it was brutal, very fast. And later on, someone whispered to me and said, "You know, Gideon, that type of pneumonia that killed your wife is related to HIV and AIDS. So we would recommend that you take an HIV test." And that was tough, because at that time, AIDS was associated with the people who are not in Christianity inside, maybe even as leaders. So people are telling us that if you're not a commercial sex worker, and you're not a truck driver, long distance drivers, and you are not gay, then you don't have to worry about things. So when I was told that, I was taken aback. But I got the courage to say, let me find out. So I went and tested, and unfortunately, the test confirmed my worst fears. I was HIV positive. And then the second point of courage came now to say, okay, it's me and the counselor who knows these results. Do I keep quiet or do I speak? And so there was that really struggle, spiritual struggle between me and the reality that was facing me. The first one was protect your career, protect your job. You are ministering with reverends, and therefore, if people know you are positive, they may throw you out of college, you know. And the other one was, but how do I manage double identity? Someone asks you, how are you? You say, I'm fine, when you're not fine. People say, any prayer requests? And you say, no, I have no prayer requests. When actually you need all the prayers in the world combined. So, and then how do you say I'm a religious leader when you are handling an aspect that people are not seeing? So there were all these issues. And then there was a selfish issue. In Uganda, we don't have as good healthcare system as you have here. We depend on family members, on relatives, on friends to support you when you are sick. There is no insurance. The salaries are so low. So if you don't tell people what you are passing through, then you won't get help. So I am saying that so that you don't think that Gideon disclosed for purely pious reasons. There was also that selfish element to say, if you need help, you have to shout out. So I did. It took me, people always ask me how long did it take you to be open. It took me 20 minutes to disclose. Because I had to make a decision when I moved from the testing center to the college. Now, after disclosure, people reacted in 3 ways. There were people who said, oh, God has sent us a prophet. We are so happy that this is happening because there is a lot of silence, there is a lot of stigma, there is a lot of discrimination, there is a lot of shame. So we are thankful. So those people gave me a lot of support. And now you come to understand the background Friends of Canon Gideon Foundation. That people came around me and formed a fellowship, which was Friends of Gideon Fellowship by then, to give me support. They saw someone who really needed help. He's braving against the current of stigma, of shame, of discrimination. So they prayed for me, they supported me. There was another group that was really not sure that I needed sympathy or empathy. They said, I'm washing my dirty linen in public. I'm shaming the church. The image of the church is being put at stake. So those ones really hated me, and they would really have preferred that I am excommunicated from the church. But thank God that the first group who chose to love me and support me were many more than the second group. There was also the third group that didn't know how to make about me. If they found those who supported me, they would join. They find those who are backbiting me, they would join me. But my being here is a testimony that friendship wins. Support, you cannot be on the wrong side if you give someone support, because it's that type of support that enabled me to survive since 1992 up to here. Very soon I was faced with issues of sexuality, of how do you manage your sex life when you have been married for only 4 years and now your spouse is gone, is dead. When someone marries, it is a public testimony of saying I was not born to be celebrated. And I always tell people that sex is a baptism name. Marriage is a baptism name for sex. So I had that child of saying now what happened. And there were young girls who didn't understand that I was HIV positive because they said, oh, we know how people with AIDS look like. You don't look like you have AIDS, you are just dodging us. So I had that leadership responsibility of saying, now, how do I protect these young people from HIV transmission? Not just the moral issue of saying, how do I not commit adultery? That was also an issue. But there was this whole issue of how do you kill someone with your virus, even when they say you have no, you are right, the sclerosis, you are right. So I prayed to God again for guidance, and something very unusual came into my heart. Get a woman who had lost a husband to AIDS and who is HIV positive and married. So I started that struggle now because people are not positive, they're not public, you don't want to say, I'm positive, I marry you, I'm positive, I marry you. That was hard, so how would you do it? I remember even crossed states. I had to go to Kenya to look for, because I saw someone who had been in that work, and I was saying, Dorothy Onyango, I'm HIV positive, so I went to Kenya to look for her to see if I can convince her. Unfortunately, I didn't get her, or fortunately, because I would never have met my current wife. So finally, I got Pamela, and Pamela had been a young woman who had been widowed at the very young age of 22, and she was there, she was positive, and my family said, hey, why don't you talk to Pamela? So we started dating, and the rest is history. I got married in July 1995. It was not easy as I'm speaking it, I'm just rushing through it. Because there were two objections. Why are you getting married when you know this marriage is not going to last a year? Because people thought, you have HIV, you have AIDS, death. So why are you wasting resources? Why are you wasting time? 4 priests said, we are not going to party to this. So they refused. And I was saying, but really, I don't want to commit adultery. I don't want to kill people with my my virus. I have so much pressure. How do I handle this? Even if I lived 1 week and I died without transmitting the virus, for me that's okay. He said, no way. But one of the reverends accepted, and he said, if you bring a certification from the father of Pamela, me, I will wed you. And so that happened, and I wedded. Now the question now again on courage, on leadership is, so if you are positive and your wife is positive, how do you consummate your marriage without passing on the virus to the children? That became an issue. And so we had again to go into a discussion with my wife, how do we handle our sex life? And we agreed we are going to adopt safe sex. We are going to postpone having children until God works out a miracle. So these days when I hear people talking about, there is this slogan, I don't know whether you have ever, those of you who have done some research on AIDS, you could have heard about this slogan about ABC. Abstain. If you can't abstain, be faithful. If you can't be faithful, use condoms. A, B, C. And they say it so simply, as if that someone who is abstaining has more self-control power than the one using condoms. In my own experience, it is the reverse. When I was single, I could manage, but when you come to, you really have to adopt that power of saying, my sex life should be safe. I shouldn't put someone else at risk. So you have now to consider that courage to go and get condoms from the counters, and the people asking you, Reverend, did we hear you saying condoms? I say yes. Really? They intimidated you so that you say, no, I meant a matchbox. But you insist because you really know what you are aiming at. So we did that for 7 years, postponing having children for 7 years, until in 2000, there was research done on prevention of mother-to-child transmission. And that research had shown that there is a way you can have children without infecting them. And so we listened, we put the ideas into practice, and we got our first baby in 2002, and we named her Love. True love waits, true love is considerate, true love is kind, true love is patient. True love has so many characteristics. And my wife did not have children from the first marriage, so she was like, okay, now for you have two, me I have one, and so do you mind giving me another baby? And I said, well, I'm at your service. So we made another baby, and we gave her a very powerful name, Hope. There is hope. And I run a campaign now. I will ask Patrick to give you some of the books I have carried for you, or Choose Hope campaign, because when we are faced with hope and despair, there is a tendency to choose the latter, despair. And despair is the one which is behind a lot of issues we are dealing with. Women being raped, being forced into sex, one family or one community or one country attacking another country out of fear. The whole issue of violence, the whole issue of keeping some communities systematically under poverty, so that you engineer and multiply inequality as a systematic way of handling class issues. That is fear. You are not so sure of what happens when people transform and they are all economically well off. So after that, I had to make sure that I concern myself with the people who are HIV positive, and I formed a network of religious leaders who are HIV positive. It's an interfaith network. We are now 13,000 members in over 25 countries now. Then I had to work on the issues of young people to ensure that those who are negative remain negative, and those who are HIV positive find a way of living positively so that they don't transmit virus to their loved ones in marriage or in having children when they decide to have children. We started the Hope Institute for Transformational Leadership, as you have seen. And now, after 10 years of working on that model, we are at the stage of using the model to create the Hope University, where we want to graduate young people into leaders of a certain kind, leaders that have the courage to produce families and communities that are safer, that are healthier, that are more peaceful, that are more prosperous, and are more spiritually fulfilling for all the members across the board, irrespective of who they are and how they look like, or their beliefs, or their orientation. So, the first question now we have to ask ourselves is how, in the context of an epidemic like HIV, how do you demonstrate the courage to lead? And the first one is really to break the silence, to put a human face on the statistic. Because people will always say, oh, there is AIDS, but no one knows who is HIV positive. And they always, if you don't know that, then you tend to associate the virus with those others. Those others. You don't think that the HIV positive person could be your son, or could be your daughter, or could be your father, or could be your mother, or could be your uncle. No. AIDS becomes the other. Those commercial sex workers, those drug abusers. So a leader who is courageous in the fight against AIDS is to break that silence and say, no, look at me. If I'm positive, therefore, any one of you, any one of us could be. And you don't have to be a special person. These days, actually, I ask people, why are people surprised that a priest can be HIV positive? I always ask them, HIV starts with human immunodeficiency virus. So why are you surprised when a human being has the virus? You would be surprised if a human being has a disease of trees, or a disease of cats, and you are like, oh my God, why? But if they are saying this is a human immuno, then you should know, as long as I am a human being, I am vulnerable. If I have the blood, I have the semen or the vaginal fluids, or I breastfeed, all these things could be put you at risk. So breaking the silence. The other one, the other courage we need, is to put a model in place that is holistic. Because when AIDS came, Professor Patrick was talking about some Pastor Paul Farrell. Yes, there were preachers who really said this is a disease that God is using to punish people who are devils. So from the word go, most of the models that we have been using to fight AIDS is a behavioral approach. Which, in that, I am sure there are people in medicine here, in this class, we really need to think through that behavioral approach to fighting the disease, especially when we tend to blame people who should be supported instead. In Uganda, I see people, for example, saying, oh, don't smoke, cigarettes kill, you know. And then they even put the label on the cigarettes, smoking kills. And you're asking yourself, but why are they stopping the production of the cigarettes? Why are you there? Why do you allow the problem to happen and then you are challenging someone to be careful? You know, so the behavioral issue has to go hand in hand with two other models. One is the biomedical approach, to see that really the health infrastructure is in place, that testing is in place, treatment is in place, prevention methods are known and adhered to. And that's helped Uganda, as you have heard, to make an inroad against AIDS. The other one, of course, is the structural approach. So a combination prevention approach that looks at the behavioral issues and looks at the biomedical issues and looks at the structural issues that drive issues that make us vulnerable, whether as individuals or as communities. Issues like poverty, issues like youth unemployment, issues like socially gendered violence, you know, against groups which are minorities or made minorities because of the cultures and traditions. Third area of courage is to clarify some issues where there is confusion in terms of disease. People confuse, for example, you had in my small clip, that people confuse faithfulness with safeness. If you drink, here you are lucky that all your tap water is safe water. You can drink water from the tap and everything's fine. But in parts where I come from, they tell you make sure that the water is boiled. So if you drink water which is yours from your own tap and it's not boiled, you get typhoid. You are at risk of catching the disease, not because you have stolen the water. No, that's because the water is unsafe. And someone can steal your water and make it safe and is not safe. So what makes sickness is not the stealing. No. Stealing can take you to hell if you are a believer in such religious values. But what makes you sick is the unsafeness of the act. I mean, like, here I see something I like here about seatbelts, that people are really socialized in valuing the seatbelt. Now, if you steal someone's car and you drive it and you put a seatbelt, maybe when you crash you may not die. But if someone drives their own car without putting a seatbelt, they crash and die. It's not just that they have stolen the car, it's just they have not followed the rules. So that needs to be explained, that morality, public health morality, and religious morality, they are like cousins, but they are not the same. Number two is to differentiate between risky environments with risky behaviors. That in situations where there is so much virus moving around, you don't have to have many partners to pick an infection. That your first boyfriend, your first girlfriend will give you the virus. I mean, if there is, like in Botswana now, 28% of the people are positive, Lesotho, Swaziland, South Africa, Nigeria, you know, that's a high prevalence. So you don't need to work very hard to pick the virus. The first sex in marriage, when the Reverend has said, be fruitful and multiply, that night, you either pass on the virus or you pick an infection. So, has someone become unfaithful? No. But they have just had, they are operating in a risky environment. So that has also to be differentiated. Finally, courage has to be shown in what we are measuring. We should not just be measuring changes in behavior alone, but we should also be looking at what are the policies are like, what are the programs on the ground like, what are the partnerships in place like, what are the personnel training issues, how are they being handled? How about the proclamation? What are people hearing? So all that has to be considered in being courageous to provide leadership. But you may ask yourself, why do we have to show courage to lead? What is at stake? Two issues that are not contestable are at stake, and the one that is contestable is at stake. One is survival. That human survival, ecological survival, planetary survival cannot be taken for granted. That we must show leadership, the courage to lead to ensure that we don't become extinct. Those of you who have done evolutionary biology, you know that there are animals that got extinct because they couldn't cope. When things changed and they couldn't change, they perished. We need that courage to ensure that, okay, if things have changed, if the population has increased, if the feeding habits are changing, if the educational issues are changing, what else do we need to change to ensure survival? But survival alone is not enough. You need to thrive. Are we together? Survival alone is not enough. You need to thrive. You need to feel safe. You need to feel healthy. You need to feel good and at peace with yourself and with your neighbor. So after survival, issues of well-being are important. And we have now to look at that and say, hey, when we are violent, do we become peaceful when we are more violent? Can you use violence to bring peace? Or what else is there? How do we solve our conflicts now that some conflicts are inevitable? Must we always have recourse to war as a way of solving conflict? That needs courage. So survival and thriving. Of course, I've said the third one is contestable because it's talking about eternal life. That in the tradition where you come from, the Bible says, what does it benefit you to gain the whole world and lose your soul? So what does it benefit you to reach 120 and you lose that eternal perspective? Of course, now these days we are changing it. That what does it benefit you to gain your soul and lose your body? So both are important. There is life before death, which we must work hard at. When is truth powerful? Because we're saying the power of truth. In my thinking is that there is only one source of truth. Although truth is one, it has dimensions. So there is a dimension of truth you can pick from revelation. There is truth you can pick from intuition. There is truth you can pick from tuition, like when you come here to study. There is truth you can pick from tradition. This is how it was done. In fact, these days I'm fascinated by the food we eat. And I'm saying, hey, wait a minute. How did people know that this is edible and this is not edible? There must have been people who died and people said, okay, don't touch that. That one is not edible, So you learn from tradition of where you're coming from. But But in my perspective of being HIV positive, I have discovered there is truth which you cannot pick, either through books or through tradition or through whatever. A truth that has to come through experience. That you know it because you have experienced it. But none of those aspects of truth are better than the other. So for truth to be powerful, we need to find a way of having a holistic approach. And these days, professors are talking about the interdisciplinary approach, that we need really more intentional about interdisciplinary studies. Maybe that's what it was meant to be, because there is no way you can understand a mountain unless you study the valley. There is no way you can understand darkness unless you study light. The truth is related, and probably that explains why the earth is round. That you start from point A, you move, and then you come back to point A, where you started from. To show that probably the fragmentation of truth could be behind the problems that we are experiencing and we are not solving at the speed we need to solve them for survival, for thriving, for the common good. Because if you are a trained doctor and you have specialized in medicine, but you have not had a good grounding in issues of human rights, issues of social justice, issues of, the philosophy of society and the sociological issues, maybe there is an aspect of truth you are missing. And probably the same person, who is in the arts and is not caring a lot to know about issues of family health, community health again. So in the university which we are pioneering, we are like, how do we bring back this coherence in truth? How do we ensure that a graduate who comes out graduates with 6 characteristics? 1, the graduate is family health and community health competent. 2, the graduate is spiritually empowered never to do to others what they would find hurtful if done to them. And 3, the graduate is technologically skilled, productively skilled. 4, they are employed in a job or in a trade that is satisfying. 5, they are social justice sensitive. They care. In the Fokagifo where I work, we say blameless, empathize more, and support better. That's part of social justice. Maybe put yourself in their shoes and say, suppose they were you. And finally, be a graduate who is environmental health aware. So you feel like, okay, if maybe that I would need your engagement on that, see whether we have really covered the power of truth in that model, whether we have exhausted what we need when we talk about an integrated truth. So truth is powerful if there is respect between the branches of knowledge. That people who are saying we are in philosophy are not saying, you guys who are in physics and chemistry, you are missing the point. No. There is the chemistry of life, there is the philosophy of life, there is the ethics of life, there is the theology of life. Every one of you is making a contribution. And if we can find a way of bringing that in harmony, maybe we arrive at more power. And the more we disintegrate that, the more we arrive at any truth. And so HIV, we have come to conclude that actually AIDS is not just a disease. It is a symptom of things that are going wrong in the way we read, in the way we trade, in the the way we train each other. You know, for example, one of the things that make me cry every night is, how could I have passed all my tests? Geography tests, history tests, biology tests, every test I would be given I would pass, except the HIV test. Maybe if I had been given good grounding in that area also, this is how HIV is transmitted, this is how it's prevented, this is what you can do. The first time I saw condoms was in the counselor's room after being positive, and they are pulling them out and they are saying, you know, these things will help. Good answer at the wrong time. Why didn't you teach me those things before? You know. So friends, let me stop there. I sometimes speak better when I am asked questions. You know, when someone is a preacher and is a teacher, that combination is dangerous. You can continue talking and talking. But thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to coming back again. I want to value this relationship. I have this philosophy that does not believe in coincidences. I always take every encounter as a good instance, as having a purpose that I may not understand, but that my not understanding it does not mean it's not there. So my being invited at Pike, is that how you pronounce that? Yes. Being here, not any other place in America. Now I'm here. There must be a purpose, and that purpose should be, it's a good purpose. So I'm looking forward to continue hearing what God is saying in this relationship, so that we can do more and do better for the common good of our planet. May God bless you.